Hi everyone. So for this video, I'm going to go through some of the questions on the assessment only on version A. So if you had version B, your questions will be identical, just different numbers. So just follow along with what I do, but look at the numbers on your actual assessment. I'm going to go through some of the questions that seem to cause the most issues between the tests. This way you can try them again, and then you can follow along with what I'm doing if you still are unsure. But I'm going to start with question number 8. Right. So when we look to solve question number 8, the first thing that we must do before we start moving things around is let's simplify everything that we can. And when we see these parentheses, this means multiplication. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply this 3 in, and we're going to multiply it and distribute it to both terms. So we must do 3 times 2x, which gives me 6x, and then 3 times -1, which is minus 3. A lot of you, when you were getting this wrong, is you were only multiplying the 3 to the 2x. Or you would only divide the 3 here and only try to divide the 3 with the 117. So until we start feeling super comfortable with solving these, I'm going to suggest that we just perform all the calculations that we can or computations that we can. So we're going to multiply it in first. So then after we multiply these two together, we get 6x minus 3. They're equal to each other. And then we still have plus 12 is equal to 117. And now we're going to look to combine everything that we can on one side of our equation before we start moving anything. And since these are on the same side of the equation, we're not moving it from one side to the other. We don't have to use inverse operations. We can just add -3 plus 12, which is equal to 9. So this then simplifies to 6x plus 9 is equal to 117. And now that there's nothing else that we can do on this left-hand side of the equation, now we're going to start using our inverse operations. And I see that I have addition and multiplication being done, and my inverse of addition, subtraction, my inverse of multiplication is division. So I'm going to get rid of my addition first. So I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. So now I have 6x is equal to 108. And then to get rid of my multiplication, I have to divide each side by 6. So then x is then going to be equal to 18. And that will then be our final answer. All right. When you are doing this, just make sure you're taking your time with multiplication. Make sure you're taking your time with your division, because some of you are making mistakes with your division, and also, especially with your negative signs, you're making some mistakes with that as well. All right. We're going to now go ahead and do number 10. I'm going to enlarge this a little bit, give myself a little bit more space. And as we talked about in class, when we have two ratios that are equal to each other, we do what's called cross multiplication. So we multiply our one numerator with the opposite denominator. So then we get 9 times 6 is equal to, and then we multiply the other numerator with the other denominator. Now the thing is, when we say we have k plus 6 in our numerator, we need to make sure that we write this in parentheses, as I told you in class, so that way we don't forget to distribute that 8 into everything. And that's where some of you went wrong with this. 9 times 6 is equal to 54. We're then going to distribute the 8 into the k and get 8k, because 8 times k is 8k. But we also must distribute it into the 6 and get plus 48. Right? Some of you are only multiplying it into the k, and that's where you're going wrong with that. So then to solve for this, we look and see, all right, well, we're being multiplied and we're being added. So we know the inverse of addition, subtraction. The inverse of multiplication is division. So I'm then going to subtract both sides by 48. So then I get 6 is equal to 8k. And then I'm going to divide each side by 8. And I get k is equal to 6 over 8. However, we must reduce our fractions. So since both of these are divisible by 2, we then will get the final answer. K is equal to 3/4. All right, so that's our final answer for number 10. For number 11, same thing as I talked about in the first problem, we must simplify everything that we can first. All right, this makes our lives easier. So since I see two x's on the same side of the equation, I can go ahead and combine those. I can do 7x minus 3x, which is then going to give me 4x. So these two will simplify to be 4x minus 22 is equal to 92. Same thing, I have my multiplication and subtraction. So the inverse of subtraction is addition. The inverse of multiplication is division. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 22 to both sides, so that way it cancels that out. So 4x is equal to then 114. And then I'm going to get rid of my multiplication through division. So I divide each side by 4. And x is equal to 114 over 4. Some of you left your answer like this. However, we must simplify as much as we can. They're both even, so I know that they're both divisible by 2. And that means that x is going to be equal to 57 over 2. All right, you could have left your answer as an improper fraction. You could have wrote it as a mixed number or decimal. But I'm always going to suggest an improper fraction for now. All right, so the next two problems that we're going to focus on are 12 and 13, and then we're only going to go over one of the extra credit questions. So for this one here, the first thing I'm going to do is I say, okay, with my x, I actually have two things that are being done. I have a multiplication of 3 and a division of 4. So when we get to that step, I'm going to show you a few ways that you can do that. But we know the first thing we have to get rid of is that addition, and we get rid of that through subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides, and now I get 3x over 4 is equal to negative 18, because we have negative 6 minus 12 is equal to negative 18. A lot of mistakes that people are making is you were forgetting the negative signs and you were doing negative 12 plus 6 and getting negative 6 as your answer. Right now, if you look at this, you can say, okay, we have multiplication and we have division. So it really doesn't matter which order you get rid of them, but you must get rid of both of them. And some of you are doing it step by step and only getting rid of one at a time. So to get rid of division, we have to multiply. So if you want to do it step by step, I can multiply each side by 4, and then these will then cancel out. And now I'm left with 3x is equal to, negative 72. And then I still have my multiplication to get rid of through division. And then I'd have to multiply each side, or divide each side by 3. And then I get x is equal to negative, 24. And that would then be our final answer. All right, so that is one way you can do it. The other way that you could have did this is we could have thought of this as a fraction being multiplied to a variable. 3 over 4 is equal to negative 18, and we could have divided by this 3 over 4. And when we divide by 3 over 4, as you should remember, our rules are keep, change, flip. Yeah, that's the action. Everybody knows how we're dividing fractions. So we keep the first number, we change to multiplication, and we flip. We take our reciprocal. You say you love me, but now you flip them like reciprocals. And we take our reciprocal, and when we're multiplying fractions, we can multiply them under the same fraction. So I can rewrite them like this. And I can look to reduce first before I do anything. So I know that 3 goes into 3 one time, and 3 goes into negative 18 negative 6 times. So then I'm left with just negative 6 times 4 over 1, which then means x is equal to negative 24. All right, you could have done that. Or if you notice, when we actually divide by a fraction, we're multiplying by its reciprocal. So what you could have just did right away is you could have just multiplied it by 4 over 3, because I know 4 divided by 4 is 1, 3 divided by 3 is 1, so I'm canceling it out. So you could do the steps with your division of your fraction, which is ultimately going to multiply by its reciprocal, or you could just go straight ahead and multiply by its reciprocal, or you can do it step by step by getting rid of the division and then by getting rid of the multiplication. I don't really care which one you do. It's whichever one you feel most comfortable with. If you're struggling with this for now, this method is probably the easiest and most straightforward because you're doing it step by step. Once you get really comfortable and confident, I would expect that you're just multiplying by its reciprocal right away. All right, I'm now going to erase this work here, so that way we can go ahead and do number 13. All right, so for this problem, I'm going to show you two ways to do this one as well. So let me write the next one over here. And same thing. The first way I'm going to show you, if you're not doing well right now and you're struggling, the first way I show you is probably the way that I would suggest you do it going forward until you start feeling comfortable. But because our first step is always to simplify everything as much as we can, we see these parentheses. So that's telling me multiplication. So this way you don't have to think about it in too many different varying ways. Just go ahead and multiply right away. Negative 3 times 7p gives me negative 21p. Negative 3 times 5 gives me negative 15. Just make sure you're distributing it to both, which is then equal to 27. All right, I see I have multiplication and subtraction that's being done. So I'm going to get rid of my subtraction through addition and multiplication through division. So I'm going to add 15 to both sides. So now I have negative 21p is then equal to 42. And now to get rid of my multiplication, I need to divide. Now, we need to divide by negative 21. Some of you were only dividing by 21, and you're giving me your answer as negative p when we need to solve for a variable as a positive number. So these then cancel out, and I get p is equal to negative 2. Right? That is one way you can do it. Perfectly fine if that's the way you do it. The other way you can do it is you can think about this being multiplication. And since there's nothing else being added to this side of my equation, I can get rid of this multiplication we know through division. So I can go ahead and get rid of this multiply by negative 3 by dividing each side by negative 3. These will then cancel, and I'm just left with 7p plus 5, and 27 divided by negative 3 is negative 9. Then we can go ahead and do the same thing. Well, I have multiplication and I have addition. I can get rid of addition through subtraction, multiplication through division. So I'm going to subtract 5, so 7p is then equal to negative 14. And then I'll divide each side by 7, and p is equal to -2. So it doesn't matter which way you do it, you still get the same answer both ways. Just make sure that what some of you are doing, you're only dividing one side by your number and not both sides. So make sure you're doing the inverse to both sides. Right, there's one more question I'm going to go through with this, and that's the last final credit or extra credit question, and that'll be it for this video. All right, so this one I want to go through, and even though this is extra credit now, I would expect that in the future, this is something that we all should be able to do. First thing we're going to do is simplify everything that we can on the left-hand side. So that means I'm going to actually multiply what I can. So 7 times 2x gives me 14x plus 7. And then I'm going to distribute the -3 in. So that will then give me -18x plus 12. And then I still have the -6x plus 32 is equal to -109, which is my original problem. What I'm going to do now, and this is what I suggest, but you don't have to, is I'm going to rewrite all of my variables so that they're next to each other, just so that way I can see everything. So it's going to be 14x minus 18x minus 6x. And then I'm going to go ahead and rewrite all of my constants next to each other, just so I'm grouping them together. And it might be a little bit easier for me to do this while they're next to each other. So plus 7 plus 12 plus 32 is then equal to -109. So now I'm going to combine all these together. Well, 14 minus 18 is equal to -4, and -4 minus 6 is equal to -10. Remember, when we're combining like terms, we just simply add the coefficients. So this is then going to give me -10x, and then I'm going to add these together. So this will then give me 44. 44 plus 7 is going to give me 51. So plus 51 is equal to -109. I see that I'm being multiplied and added. So to get rid of my addition, I need to subtract. To get rid of multiplication, I need to divide. So I'm going to subtract 51 from both sides. So then I get -10x is equal to -160. And then to get rid of my multiplication, I'll divide each side by -10. And x is then equal to 16. All right, and that is our final answer, and that is it for this video. If you need help with any of the other questions, first check the answer key that was given to you, see if you can do it on your own, and then send me a message or come and see me in class.